Namanda, 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 Namanda. Ngon cho sengan ishimu jodo shingan fumanzok seifu josho ngak ngao muryou ko 不意大世主、不再小便具、政府上昇学、が市場分動、妙正長寺法、空教未所門、政府上昇学、利欲人少年、上映主本業、真無浄土、一生天人師、人力縁大公、不正無才道、少女三苦名、交際主役難、対比知縁縁、滅死根門案、閉塞小悪道、自断前修門、高僧上満足、いおろじぽ、日月主樹期、天候不言、一種解放像、公正独法、上大集中、説法四式、供養一切物、具足修徳法、元年心上満、得意三害を、女分無下知、自断未不詳、願学エリ、都市最小尊、心安や効果、大戦の感動、国書天人、とうち妙見。ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダ がにしくどく平等性祭道法菩大心往生Namanda, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Please join me in Gasho. Now. Thus, on the one hand, you should not be anxious that the Tathagata will not receive you because you do wrong. A foolish being is by nature possessed of blind passions, so you must recognize yourself as being of karmic evil. On the other hand, you should not think that you deserve to attain birth because you are good. You cannot be born into the true and real fulfilled land through such self-power calculation. I have been taught that with shinjin of self-power, a person can attain birth only in the realm of indolence, the borderland, the womb palace, or the city of doubt. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's second YouTube July service of the Tacoma Buddhist Temple. I hope everyone had a wonderful and fulfilling July 4th weekend with your friends and family. For many of you, it was the first time you were all able to get together. And I certainly hope that you cherish the time with your loved ones and your special people in life, and that you realize that these relationships, the way that the people in your life are not meant to be taken for granted. They are meant to be cherished and loved. Because as we all know, with the pandemic, in some ways, time moved very, very slow. But in other ways, we realize, wow, a lot of time has passed since I've seen this person. And so when we were able to get together with people we loved and people we care about and people we haven't seen in a while, there is this overwhelming sense of joy, being able to hug our loved ones, being able to catch up on our lives, being able to see each other. It is a wonderful thing. Today, I would like to talk a little bit about the Gosandai that I shared this morning. And it was a bit of a long one. I apologize for that. But I kind of wanted to sort of, again, touch base with some of the core beliefs or the core aspects of our teaching of Jodo Shinshu. So with this Gosandai, we once again see, in a sense, the almost dichotomy-like nature of Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu. On the one hand, there is this notion that, okay, well, for the person who is difficult to save, for a person who does do wrong, who does commit, and I put this in quotation marks, evil, they are still grasped by Amida Buddha. And then he goes on to say that we should also not think that we deserve to be born in the Pure Land. We should not think of ourselves as, oh, I'm definitely going to the Pure Land because I do acts of good, or I donate millions of dollars to charity. I donate this to the homeless shelter every year, right? That kind of thinking is also flawed. But however, I think one thing that Shinran forgets to mention, and of course he does mention this in other letters. So this letter, or this comes from the Lamp for the Latter Ages, from letter number 2. And it talks about this idea that we have of this kind of false idea that we have to earn our place in Amida Buddha's Pure Land, or we have to buy our way into Amida Buddha's Pure Land. We have to do good acts. We have to have all these karmic merit points brought up. This is flawed thinking, according to Shinran Shonin. But he also talks about, in this passage, a foolish being. So I'm going to just read this passage again. A foolish being is by nature possessed of blind passions, so you must recognize yourself as being of karmic evil. This is a hard pill to swallow, I think, because of the word evil. However, just a note for now, and I'm not going to go into this in this Dharma talk, I promise, but the word evil has very, very different connotations in Buddhism than it does in other religions. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When I say evil, I'm not pointing to you and saying, you're this evil person or this horrible being. There's very different connotations to what evil actually means. And in some ways, I would say as simple as being an ordinary person, being a person with hang-ups, being a person with problems. We've all heard that, right? That's your defense. We all have problems. And yes, we do. We all have hang-ups. We all have our issues. We all have our problems. We all are afflicted by what we now consider to be in Buddhism as our, in a sense, quotation, negative karma. But I'd like to go into a little bit about the notion of foolish being. And I would actually like to relate it a little bit back to myself, or back to give you myself as an example. So let's talk a little bit about Reverend Cindy and my trip down to California. As you all know, Reverend Cindy and I are from California, and this 4th of July, we celebrated our 1-year anniversary with our family down in California. And it's our 1-year anniversary happens to be on the 4th of July. Yay, so I can never forget that, right? So on a map, the drive from Tacoma to California does appear to be long. When you're actually doing it, it's longer. So on a map, when you drive, the drive from Tacoma to California does appear to be pretty long. When you're driving it, when you're actually doing it, it's even longer. We left Tacoma at 4 a.m. in the morning, and we were able to arrive in California, at my parents' house specifically, by 5:30 p.m. in the evening. So I'm very grateful for this because I'm very, very grateful for this because we were able to get there in time for dinner, and we were able to catch up with my parents, and then we were able to also have dinner with Cindy's parents. It was a nice time. However, it was also stressful. Gunning it down to California from Tacoma really did exhaust us in a way. So I had to think about this, that we have these notions about we as foolish beings, or we as regular human beings. We have these false notions about what vacations are, what leisure time is. In this particular instance, I was looking forward to having lots of fun with all of the friends and relatives that I haven't seen in many months, some even years, because I was in Japan for 2 years and I wasn't able to see a lot of these relatives in person. And when I got back, I couldn't see them because there was the pandemic. So I was able to see a lot of these people, and again, before I took the trip, I thought this was going to be so much fun. I thought that the drive down was going to be this happy joy ride. And what ended up happening was that when we drove, and when Cindy and I were in the car driving down all the way, even with a very light load, we didn't drive down with hardly anything. It was still a very stressful drive because we didn't know what the traffic was going to look like, and all of a sudden there are fires starting to happen around again, and there was a lot of added stress. We probably didn't eat very well. We should have eaten a little bit better, so we weren't feeling too good when we got down there. However, there was still this need to power through, get down to California, and we get there. Then once we get there, well, we were able to relax a little bit, but there wasn't really a lot of time to relax. Now, I've talked about my mother in a previous Dharma talk on Mother's Day especially. And just so you all know, my mother is also very much a person who likes to host parties. She's the hostess with the mostess. I like that saying. And she takes it upon herself to host a lot of the family gatherings at their home in Oakland. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful trait my mother has. However, it's also very tiring because myself, my brother, even Cindy, and my father, we all have to, my mother becomes a general, becomes the general of the household, and she begins to basically order, and she wants things done a certain way. So in a sense, we had a little bit of time to relax, but not a lot of time to relax. We immediately, the next day, had to kind of jump into preparing the house for the celebration. And this was actually happening the Saturday. So 4th of July was on Sunday. So we arrived in California on Friday and then do all of this prep work on Saturday. And thankfully, Cindy's family also came to help out as well. So I really am appreciative of that. And then the actual day of celebration comes, the 4th of July. And it's a whirlwind. There's still all these last minute preparatory things that we have to do, that we have to get ready. And my dad is outside at the barbecue cooking. We're receiving all of the guests. It's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. And that's sometimes, I think, we as humans, we don't necessarily fall short in that we shouldn't do these things, but we don't sometimes consider the hard work that goes into these things either. When we think of parties, we think of like the fun side of it. We think of, oh yeah, I get to hobnob with my friends, I get to drink, I get to eat good food, I get to have great conversation. We think of all the fun parts of it. We don't really think about the hard work that goes into it. And then when that part comes, we start to get stressed out. We start to get upset. We might get a little, And it's the same thing. When the drive down to California, I thought to myself, well, you know, we'll leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning, no big deal, right? And yes, it was a relatively easy drive because we didn't really have to run into any traffic. But still, waking up at like 3:30, have the car ready to go, and then jetting out by 4 a.m., it's a very stressful thing and not really good on the body. So again, these things are all attributes of what it means to be a foolish being. So when we talk about foolish beings in Buddhism, when we talk about Bonbu or Akunin, right, we're not really talking about this evil person, this like person who commits grave atrocities that, right, and that history looks upon them as these evil tyrants. We're talking about ordinary people. We're talking about ordinary beings, just like you and me. We're talking about beings who make assumptions, who calculate in our heads, and then fall short on that. And it's really, really, that's one of the key differences here in the word evil or in the word foolish. when we're talking about this in context of Buddhism. And so this is, in my personal opinion, one of the things that shows me that even though I can wear a robe, and even though I have this nice wagesa, and even though I am able to stand at this podium talking to you, I'm still a foolish being. I'm still just an ordinary person, just like you, and just like the rest of us. I am still an ordinary person. I am not enlightened by any means. I still am susceptible to emotions, to getting upset. I do get upset in traffic. I do get upset in the car if like there's a long line that I have to wait in at In-N-Out. And again, this is one of the core teachings of our tradition in Jodo Shinshu. We are foolish beings. So we can't hope that with our own self-power, our own self-calculation, that we can achieve the ultimate awakening of enlightenment. We must rely on Amida Buddha. Now, again, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't go see your relatives or that you shouldn't have gatherings with friends or get-togethers. By all means, have them. It's just that we sometimes forget as people, right? We only think about the positive and the fun side of things. We sometimes forget that there's also a very stressful and a work-related part that goes into it as well. Now, again, and maybe we can find the balance, right, where we can really enjoy ourselves. The problem is that we are so eager, all of us are so eager to get back and see our friends and be with each other again. Sometimes I think we might have forgotten what it feels like to be in a large crowd of people, to be with a large group of people, and how energy draining that can be sometimes. So when we look at the quote again, you should not be anxious that the Tathagata will not receive you because you do wrong. And then on the other hand, you should not think that you deserve to attain birth because you are good. You cannot be born into the true and real fulfilled land through such self-power calculation. One of the things I think that Shinran is trying to ease the minds of his followers is in a sense, don't be so hard on yourself because you already are a foolish being. Now, this is not a license to do bad things either. This is not a license to be lazy. This is not a license to not try. Okay, this is not that. What this is first you have to acknowledge that you are a foolish being. I have to acknowledge that I'm a foolish being. And I think we have to do this again and again and again. Because sometimes we forget. Usually, we have in our heads, I'm always right. Or this is the way I think, and it's the right way to think. But if we stop and remember the teachings, we realize, but that's my own calculation. This is how I think. And there are perfect examples of people who always try to do this. And I sometimes wish that they would come out of their shell and realize that, yeah, maybe their way of thinking is just one way of thinking. And I have that problem too. So, but on the other hand, Shinran says, but on the other hand, because of that reason, because you are a being filled with blind passions or filled with your bonbu-ness, you are embraced by Amida. The Dharma is still working for us. The Dharma is not going to stop. The wheel of the Dharma continues to turn. Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion ceases for nobody. We are still receiving the light of Amida Buddha's wisdom. We are still receiving the warmth of Amida Buddha's compassion. This doesn't mean that we should stop trying to do better. This doesn't mean that we should stop trying to make the world or the country we live in fact, a better place. And in fact, if anything, this inspiration that we can get from Amida Buddha should inspire us to do a little bit more. But that being said, we will fall short sometimes, and we are prone to acts of emotion, to acts of fragility, right? Again, I don't like this false perception that people put on Buddhism at times, that we are this religion where we're all just kind of blitzed out and totally spiritual, and we never get mad, and we're always peaceful and calm. we're human too. So I think we should always remember this. And because we're human, because we're Bonbu, because we are ordinary beings, Amida Buddha embraces us. So with that in mind, I hope everyone has had a wonderful holiday weekend and you were able to get around and see some of the people you loved. When you get together again, hopefully it gets a little bit easier, and hopefully our social stamina will start to increase a little bit. So with that in mind, will you all please join me in Gassho? Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Nam Mandabs, Nam Mandabs, Nam Mandabs, Nam Mandabs.